This is former WWE referee Jimmy Korderas, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Welcome back to WrestlingEpicenter.com. On the Newsmaker line with us right now is former longtime WWE referee Jimmy Korderas. Jimmy, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on the show, and I got to tell you, I got a book in the mail a few weeks ago from the good folks at ECW Press, and I've read the book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's obviously a book that you wrote. It's called The 3 Count, and tell me a little bit about it. How did the idea to put your life's work as a referee in the wrestling industry in paper, in print?
To make I guess pretty much a long story is as condensed as possible. When I left the WWE, I really didn't think about writing a book. I mean, my wife kept saying you should write a book about all your time there and just fun stories and stuff like that. And in my mind, I was always thinking that nobody wants to read a book about fun stuff. Everybody wants to read the down and dirty stuff, what goes on behind the scenes. That's really where I'm going with this, right?
Exactly, right.
And then I started working with Art O'Cal up here in Canada, doing at first Right After Wrestling, which became Aftermath.
Right.
And we'd hang out, and I'd tell him stories about, times on the road, fun stuff and stuff that made me laugh, at least anyways. And he said, dude, you got to write a book about this stuff. And I said, yeah, but, nobody's going to want to read that stuff, That's my mindset, and that's what I'm thinking. And then, one day he just sent me an email. I guess he was keeping track of all the stories I was telling. He goes, see all these stories? That's a book. So we contacted the people at ECW Press, and they were interested, and, we went from there. And like you said, the book's in print now, and I still can't believe it.
How has the reaction been to the book so far?
For the most part, pretty good. I mean, obviously, not everybody's going to like it, and I didn't expect them to, but really quite favorable. And it's kind of humbling and at the same time gratifying because it kind of dispelled my thoughts about people wanting to read about the down and dirty side of the business, and I do understand that not everybody had positive experiences throughout their careers. And even myself, I don't want to say that, I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything and say that I didn't have some tough times there, but for the most part, I enjoyed my time there, and I loved what I did. I loved the business. I loved my job there, and why not write about that?
Absolutely. What do you attribute? We had Stevie Richards on a few weeks ago, and we were talking about how it's a rarity for somebody like him to be in the WWE for as long as he was. He was there for nearly a decade. Yourself, you had 22 years there. What do you attribute your success and your ability, your staying power, to stay on the WWE, for lack of a better way of putting it, payroll for as long as you did?
I think it's a few things. One, I have thick skin, so when I take advice very well. When people, I ask for advice from people, ask for feedback. What am I doing wrong? What can I improve on and stuff like that? Like I always say, in the wrestling business, you can't stop learning. You never stop learning, and it doesn't matter who you are. You can be somebody on the ring crew. You can be a referee. You can be, obviously someone in the ring, a talent, and one of the boys, but you're always evolving. The business is always changing, so you have to keep adapting with it. And always, I've pretty much always been kind of like a glass half full kind of guy. So I always try to be positive, work hard, listen, and learn, and not rock the boat unless you need to. You have to pick your battles. You can't be one of those guys. You know how they say right. The squeaky wheel always gets the grease.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes if you get too squeaky, they replace the wheel. You got to kind of pick your spots and just if it's important enough where you have to speak up, that's fine. But if it's not, sometimes you just say, you know what, let it roll off your back.
That's a fair point. Absolutely.
Going into your role as I'm sorry, James. Going into your role as a referee, one of the things that I've always found most interesting about a wrestling referee is that, basically the match involves three guys, maybe more if they're tag team partners or managers. But the referee is kind of the unsung hero of the match, and it's the personality in the ring, the talent in the ring that we're not supposed to really be paying attention to. And my question is, what goes on in the role of a wrestling referee that maybe us in the audience isn't really aware of?
I think there's a lot of intricacies to it that the casual fan won't pick up on. For example, just little things like maybe something simple like passing a message from one of the boys to the other. They want to relay, whether it's a spot or something, or even a small little message, but doing it in a way that looks discreet. Where people don't know that's exactly what you're doing. I mean, I've seen guys out, and I'm not going to point fingers at anybody because I'm sure I've done it also. But walking over and you could tell that they're actually passing a message on to somebody. And there's ways to be discreet. There's a whole bunch of different little things. When I talked earlier about evolving and adapting and learning, one of the things I tried to do and in evolving my work as a referee is, as I got on in my career, I realized that, the old stereotypical referee, the blind referee kind of thing.
Yeah. The one who's always never looking in the right spot at the right time. I know what you mean. Yep.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't fit with today's wrestling. I don't think, anyways. I think people are too smart now to go along with the that kind of thing. So I kind of treat it this way. I started thinking that if I believed it was a shoot in my mind and treated the match as if it were that way, then maybe the people who do pay attention to the ref would believe it as well. So that's how that was kind of my approach in the ring. It didn't matter who I was in there with, unless it was like one of those comedy matches with the minis from Mexico or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. But
yeah.
I think referees today should watch guys like Herb Dean and John McCarthy from MMA, because when you watch those guys, they're there, but you're not really paying attention to them, and they always look like they're paying attention to the match and doing their job. And that's the way professional wrestling referees should work. And they also stay out of the way too. So they're not visible until they need to be visible, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. I remember there was a referee, and I'm going to kick myself because I can't recall who it was, but I was intrigued by a comment that they made, and they said that if you're a wrestling referee and you're readily noticed on television, then you're not doing your job well.
Yeah. Wow. I'm not sure who said that, but he's absolutely right. That's one of the things that I was absolutely fine with when I became a referee is as a referee, you're not going to be a focal point. You're not in it to be a TV star or whatever. You're there to help tell the story in a match, and the guys in the match, the talent, are the guys, who should be the focal point. And if you're in it to try and get yourself noticed, then you're not helping the match at all.
Absolutely.
And actually, going back to an earlier point that you made, sorry to step on you again, James. Going back to an earlier point that you made about MMA referees and how guys should pay attention to those guys and draw for them as referees, that's actually really interesting because James and I on this show, we talk a lot about how more MMA and UFC elements need to be incorporated to modern-day wrestling at all levels, not just referees. Is that something that you think the wrestling business should do in general, kind of take pages out of the UFC's book and try to incorporate some of those elements into the modern-day product?
I think you can do it in moderation, just like anything else. If you try to take too much from it, then it looks like you're trying to copy MMA. I mean, you get little things like every once in a while when Daniel Bryan, for example, or Bryan Danielson is not doing his comedy shtick with Kane as Team Hell No, and he's in a match, when you watch him in a match, you see him incorporate little pieces of MMA. The same with CM Punk and certain guys. So with certain guys, it'll work. You know, you see MMA actually incorporating a little bit of professional wrestling, and the more they do, the more they attract. Look at Chael Sonnen right now. I mean, he's more pro wrestling than pro wrestling is right now. You know.
There you go. Now, you mentioned the blind referee, and I got to ask you about this. I was doing some research, and I think you touched on it a little bit in the book. I read it a couple weeks ago, so it's a little fuzzy. But I do remember that you know how referees, they seem to be narcoleptic in that if you touch them the wrong way, they pass out. You had an incident that happened where I guess it was your first WrestleMania 4, where Jimmy Hart really blasted you pretty good with that megaphone. What was your memories of getting blasted with a megaphone, I guess, and how was your relationship with Jimmy after the fact?
Yeah, that was, I think I hope I explained it well enough in the book, where it wasn't actually the megaphone, the hit with the megaphone that actually... It
was the follow-through, right?
Well, no, it was me following through, trying to take a good bump for WrestleMania and hitting my chin basically on the canvas when I landed.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
And never had a problem. Jimmy's a great guy. I mean, and I felt bad because for a long time, you know, you have that mentality built into you, you know, never break kayfabe and that sort of stuff. So, you know, people would ask all the time, oh, how did it feel getting knocked out by Jimmy Hart at WrestleMania? And I'm kind of like, I wish I could tell people he didn't do it. I felt bad. Yeah, I felt bad for him. You know what I mean? People thinking, oh, what a dick. You know. But no, you know, it wasn't him. It was actually me. I did it to myself, and I felt bad about it for a long time. But now that you know everything's pretty much above board now, so I could come clean and let everybody know that Jimmy had nothing to do with it, and we're all good.
Absolutely good. Jimmy is the strangest and nicest guy I ever had on the show. He's the only guy in the history of me doing the show who at the end of the interview said, "I love you." And I was like, what? So I don't know why that took me as surprised as it did, but it was very strange to me. Anyway, as I started to say earlier, I have a huge collection of wrestling tapes. I mean, I've been collecting longer than you were a referee, just a complete wrestling nerd, bookshelves floor to ceiling filled with all these DVDs and tapes and everything you can imagine. The reason I mention this is because I have a pretty good collection of Maple Leaf Gardens tapes from the WWF, and I know that's where you made your start. What was it like for you living the dream, as a former host of our show used to say, and finally for the first time in your life stepping out there and being the referee?
It's really indescribable. I mean, like growing up in Toronto and you know, attending all those events at Maple Leaf Gardens as a fan, and even I shouldn't say as a fan, because even through my tenure of the WWE and afterwards, still a fan, and always was a fan, and will continue to be a fan. Mm-hmm. But you know, there's something special about being able to debut in your, you know, when you first time in your own hometown, but especially at somewhere like Maple Leaf Gardens, because here in Canada, Maple Leaf Gardens could be compared to pretty much Madison Square Garden, you know, as far as Canada goes. It's one of the oldest, most legendary buildings in Canada, arenas in Canada, which I wish it was still around today in some aspects, but it is kind of, but not really, but that's a different story altogether. But it's really an incredible feeling, and especially, you know, for a kid growing up in Toronto and seeing all the greats that went through there, and then all of a sudden finding yourself in the ring and walking down that ramp that led from the dressing room that was level with the ring, which at the time I thought, I could be wrong, but at the time I believe it was a unique look.
It was, yeah. I think Japan did it at the time still, but you guys, it was it's certainly for the WWF, it was the only territory the only arena that did that.
Yeah, and it was just a cool feeling going from being the guy sitting beside that ramp taking pictures to someone walking across it into the ring.
Very cool, very cool. Now, you mentioned earlier about learning as you went along, and I got to ask you about the incident with Daniel Puder and Kurt Angle. And the way you handle it, being the professional, I mean, I think I could say safely that you're the guy who basically saved that segment. Would you not agree?
I hate to pat myself on the back, but it was more reactionary than anything. At the time, I wasn't as I've been watching more MMA now that I've been away from the WWE and really getting into it. But at that time, I wasn't as educated about MMA. But I did know that what Daniel Puder had on Kurt Angle was a Kimura, and I said, "Oh, geez, this is not good." And I know that not making excuses or not for anybody, but Kurt Angle went into it as an amateur wrestling kind of thing. Daniel Puder has an MMA background, and he did what he instinctively thought to do, which was put on the Kimura lock on and try to get Kurt to submit. But in amateur wrestling, that's technically not a legal hold. But so anyways, as things started to progress, I could see that both Charles Robinson, who was in the ring with me, and I were looking at each other going, this is not going well. How do we get out of this? And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way to get out of this without physically trying to pull him apart, and even that wouldn't be a good idea. And we knew there was no way Kurt was going to tap. He would rather lose his arm than tap.
I believe that. I believe that, yeah.
So when they hit the ground and Daniel Puder landed on his back, it was just instinctively to think to go down and count. So I counted to 3, even though Puder may have rolled one shoulder up. That's debatable. I guess you can look at the tape and judge for yourself. But now that I think back of it, hindsight is 20/20. If it was an amateur contest, I only needed to count to 1.
That's a good point.
Why did I count to 3? See, that's that pro wrestling mentality. It's ingrained. But the funny part is, one of the producers, when I got to the back, says to me, he said, "Did they tell you to count?" I said, "No, I just thought I better do something." And they said, "Well, you probably saved Kurt's arm."
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Did you ever have a conversation with Kurt Angle about that?
Not really. I thought that was one of those things that's better left.
Yeah, better left. Little egg on the face, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, working with the WWF for as long as you did, you were part of many high-profile matches from WrestleManias and SummerSlams and all types of huge events. Was there ever a time in your career where you just looked at any of those huge crowds or high-profile matches and were just in awe of what you were a part of?
All the time. I mean, it doesn't go away. I mean, some people can tell you, anybody comes, "Oh, yeah, you get used to it," and BS. You don't. It's just it's a cool feeling. You walk out there and there's 70,000, 80,000 people. How can you not, get this, adrenaline rush and this and goosebumps? If you don't belong in the ring, regardless of whether you're a referee or one of the boys. If you don't get that adrenaline rush in front of 70,000, 80,000 people, what are you doing there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I was actually at WrestleMania this year. I was in the crowd, and it was my first time being in one of those major, large 80,000-person crowds. And just being in the crowd, I was excited. I was just sitting there the whole time thinking, I can't imagine being in that ring performing in front of this.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean, because last year in Miami was the first WrestleMania I got to attend that I wasn't working.
Right.
And it's just such a cool feeling that like you said, you're there in the crowd, and it gives you shivers. I mean, just the whole atmosphere is fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think you could do an interview, unfortunately, about this book without talking about something that you've probably been asked about more than being hit by Jimmy Hart, and that is, unfortunately, the night of Over the Edge, 1999. And that was one of the things that I kind of, when thumbing through the book when I first got it, I read that whole chapter instead of thumbing through it. And I've since gone back and read the whole book, but like I said, that chapter just grabbed me right away. You were, for those who don't know what I'm referring to, you were actually in a ring when Owen fell and subsequently passed away. I guess the short version of how do you feel about that evening, and does it still, I mean, I could tell you I wasn't in the ring. I wasn't even watching the pay-per-view live, and I still got chills when somebody told me the news. So, I mean, I can't imagine what you go through.
Yeah, that's without a doubt the the hardest thing I ever had to go through, not just in my professional career but personal career. It was really hard that night, and it was something that I never really spoke about, really outside my family, my wife and stuff. That really, you know how it is. Sometimes you keep stuff inside, thinking you don't want to talk about stuff, and I
Right.
kept it inside for so long, and I thought for sure this had to be part of the book, because it was such an important part of who not only for myself but to talk about Owen. I mean, everybody. There's been others who have spoken about Owen and what a great guy he is or was, and it's true. When you talk about good guys, I know everybody says, well, he was a great guy. Owen truly was one of the nicest people you will ever meet. I don't know anybody on this planet who has a bad thing to say about him. And I just wanted to, just give my thoughts and my feelings on that night, and hopefully ease some of the, I don't want to say the weight off that night that I have been experiencing since that night. But it's something that's going to live with me, and even to this day, I still got to deal with it. And it's a little easier as time goes by, but it's still one of those things that I really can't shake.
Has it been cathartic to talk about it?
To some extent, but not to the point I thought it would. I thought it would be a lot more cathartic than it actually was. I thought putting pen to paper would help a lot more than it did. I'm not saying it didn't help. It did, but it's just, man, it just, like I say in the book. I mean, 6 inches to my right, and I may not be talking to you guys right now.
Oh. Well, like I said, that's one of the heavier things that we'll talk about. But onto a happier subject, the cover of the book. When I first got it, it's a striking cover. It's a very cool picture. For those who haven't seen it, it actually is on the cover photo of our Facebook page. But what it is Edge and The Undertaker, and you're in the center holding up the championship belt, and it really does catch your eye. What made you decide to choose that as your cover photo for your book?
Well, for me, that match, WrestleMania 24 in Orlando, Edge versus The Undertaker, for me it's a career highlight. I mean, to be not only refereeing a match between someone like The Undertaker, who I have the utmost respect for and probably is my favorite superstar of all time, from a personal level anyways, and a good friend of mine, Adam Edge Copeland, who two great legends in this business, and to be in the ring with them on the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania. It's the main event. It's the last match. And Greg Oliver is the one who took this picture from, and he graciously allowed us to use it for the cover. And I thought this match was the highlight of my career, and what better photo to put on as the cover of the book than this one. Me standing between two of the biggest superstars of all time.
Very cool, very cool.
That's really awesome. And actually, that'll segue into our next question. Adam Edge Copeland actually wrote the foreword to the book. How did that come about, getting Edge to be a part of that?
It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I mean, I was trying to think of, being a novice at writing a book, somebody says, well, you got to get someone to write the foreword. And I said, oh, well, who am I going to get to write the foreword? I'd like it to be somebody, Canadian, since I'm Canadian, maybe make it a Canadian flavor. But you know what, someone I have a history with would be cool, and I do have a history with Adam. And I just asked him. I just said, I'm writing a book, and how do you feel about doing the foreword for it? And he said, absolutely. When do you need it by? And I said, well, whenever you do it, that's cool. And he did it, and he sent it over to me, and when I read it, I said, wow. I was blown away, and I really appreciate him doing that for me.
Very cool, very cool. you spoke about being Canadian. I hate to go to a downer again, but instead of taking it on a the current affairs kind of approach, let me ask you your honest opinion. You were in the ring with and refereed many Chris Benoit matches, and what is your opinion, not about what happened, because we've talked about that till the cows come home, but what is your opinion of him almost being erased from the history books?
You know what? It's one of those deals where I understand it because of the circumstances surrounding the whole tragedy there. At the end of the day, the WWE is a corporate entity, and they have people that they have to answer to. So I think for them, that approach is, I understand it. I understand what they're doing. It's kind of hard to kind of separate the body of work of Chris Benoit in the ring, who was, as you guys know, a phenomenal talent, and a guy I considered a friend because, regardless of what happened that day, like you said, no one will ever know. I mean, we could all speculate, but no one will ever know, and the only people who know are not with us anymore. So there's nothing we can say about that. But what we can say is what happened on that day is that's not the same guy that I knew, that I considered a friend and considered one of the best workers in the business.
Right.
And like I said earlier, if the WWE chooses to not acknowledge him, I mean, I understand it completely, and it's just harder when you, for guys who knew him, for some guys who knew him to understand it, but I do understand it, and I think for fans who clamor that he should go in the Hall of Fame and they should do all that, I don't know. I don't know if it's proper. It's like
I don't know if the Hall of Fame would be something that they would do, but I just think it's strange if you review their history and you review like the WrestleMania 20 results. Well, apparently, the match or the DVD on the store, for example, says the main event of WrestleMania 20 was Shawn Michaels versus Triple H, and it's like, well, wait a minute. I mean, whether we like what he did or not, and obviously nobody likes what he did, he still existed. I mean, O.J. Simpson still ran for as many yards as he did. It still happened, but I mean that's my kind of only negative. But I do certainly, for future acknowledgments, I think that's fairly a write-off because they don't want to, they don't want the press involved with that.
Right, exactly. Like I was saying, when you're a big corporate entity, you have too many people that you have to answer to, whether it's a board of directors, stockholders, people who advertise with your company. It's a very touchy subject, and you really don't want to, tick any of them off. So, sometimes, some people say it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. I think sometimes it's better to just, like I said earlier, if you have to choose your battle sometimes.
Absolutely. So what's going on with Aftermath Wrestling? Is that something that you're still up to and doing?
Yeah, well, we got the television version up here in Canada still.
Awesome.
The radio or podcast version is on hiatus. There's been some, behind the scenes mergers and acquisitions up here as far as the station that carried us. So it's a big. I don't want to say it's a mess. It's not a mess. It's just I think sooner or later the podcast will return in some form or fashion. We're working on a few things, anyways.
Very cool. Are you still pursuing broadcasting?
Oh, absolutely. I'm doing some stuff with the Score Television up here right now, and maybe hopefully expanding into other sports other than professional wrestling. But that remains to be seen. We're still, again, it's a work in progress.
Awesome. Well, I'll call you Jimmy. I almost called you Mr. Korderas. It's been great having you on the show, and I can't thank you enough for spending this time with us. And for those who might not have ever sat down and read a book from a guy who was in the ring calling some of the biggest matches of all time, it really is a cool book to read. And we kind of touched on some of the more heavy subjects in the book, but in reality there's a lot of lighthearted and more humorous things in there. So anybody who's reading this and thinks it's by no means a sob story book, it's a very lighthearted book, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And I thank you, and I can't remember his name, but the ghostwriter who helped you write it, because you guys really did a great job, and it was a fun read for me, and I certainly do appreciate you putting that out there.
Well, I got to correct you there, too. There's no ghostwriter. That was all me, buddy.
That was all you?
That was all me. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, the whole idea was, I was thinking to myself when I was writing it, how do I make it sound like, how do I sound like a writer? And then I thought to myself, I'm just going to write it like I'm talking to you guys right now and relaying a story, so to speak, without all the stuttering. Anyways, the best compliment I got was actually from Charles Robinson. Charles read the book and he called me and he said, "You know what? Just reading the story sounded like I could picture myself sitting in the car with you, hearing you tell these stories." And that to me was a great compliment, because that's how I wanted it to come off, like it was just me telling stories, basically the way I speak, as opposed to trying to be quote unquote Mr. Author, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it does come off that way. It sounds like, one of my favorite shows on television, it discusses music rather than wrestling, and that's that metal show. And the reason I like that show is because it seems like just a bunch of guys sitting around a bar talking, and there's no BS. It's straightforward honesty, and that's the way I think everything should be. I think that we're at a stage now where putting on the big radio voice, or putting on the, as you would have put it, the author, using the author's pen and making it seem different than you telling the story would hurt the story. I think that it would take away from it rather than helping it.
Right, and we talked about the podcast, that the Aftermath podcast and stuff like that we used to do, and we took the same approach with that. We didn't try to be, put on an analyst's face or put on a broadcaster's face or voice, like you said, and try to be like, I don't know if you guys remember the old Mary Tyler Moore show.
Yeah.
Where you got Ted Beck, the anchorman. He had the anchorman voice when he was on air. It was just us talking and giving opinions and having a good time, talking about stuff we liked.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I do want one follow-up question, and then this will probably be the last question of the interview, unless Patrick has anything to ask you. You mentioned a couple times you were a referee, and then you would mention separately one of the boys. Were the referees treated like the boys at all?
Yeah, for the most part, but at the same time, the referees are considered one of the boys, but they're not really one of the boys. I mean, it's hard to explain. You're in this weird gray area because you do work for especially in the WWE, you work for talent relations, or you work for the WWE. So you're kind of like in this gray area where you're not really 100% one of the boys, even though you're treated like that. And most of the boys are pretty cool. I mean, obviously, you're not going to get along with everybody. It's like anywhere you work, but it's so hard to explain. I wish I had the right words to give you right now, but it's just, like I said, it's one of those, it's like the Bermuda Triangle, so to speak. Yeah. You're kind of in limbo there, for someone like myself who was fortunate enough to be there, for so many years. After I was there for so many years, you're kind of more accepted. But but at the same time, they showed all the referees a lot of respect, which is cool. Very cool.
Well, your book is out right now through ECW Press, and it's really a great read. It's called The 3 Count, and it really is a great book for people to check out. If they check out this interview is either on YouTube or in MP3 format, you can find a link at WrestlingEpicenter.com, which will take you directly to the ECW Press page where you could purchase the book, as well as the Amazon page where you could purchase it as well. And hopefully everybody will check this out because it really is a fun book to read. very real, and from a different perspective than most of the wrestling books out there. Usually it's one of the boys or a tell-all book, a kiss and tell book by one of the let's leave it at that. but it's definitely from a different perspective, and it really has a unique feel to it. So I really appreciate the book, and I wish you continued success with it.
Well, I appreciate that, and thanks for thinking of me and having me on for the chat. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate it all. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well,
thanks again for choosing. Thanks again for listening, and stay tuned for more from WrestlingEpicenter.com in just one moment.
This is Bret the Hitman Hart, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. We just finished up with our great interview with Jimmy Korderas. We can't thank Jimmy enough for having spent the amount of time he did with us. Really a strong interview, something I'm very proud to have been a part of. And I do invite everybody to check out Amazon. Just type in Jimmy Korderas or click the link on our website. You can pick up this book. It's a great read. And like I said with him on the phone, I made it sound like there's a lot of negative stories or really dark stories, because there is that component of it. I mean, for God's sakes, the guy was almost fallen on when Owen fell to his death, so there's going to be that component to it. But it really is a lighthearted book. I mean, it's a funny and lighthearted and interesting book. It's not just, everybody I know died. It's not like that at all.
Now, I have not read the Jimmy Korderas book yet, but I am going to try and compare it to a wrestling book that I have read. Is it anything like the Larry Zbyszko book? Is it more like that, where it's just basically a random series of funny anecdotes and hilarious stories about being in the wrestling business?
Yes and no. I mean, it's its own kind of animal. It's a little different, but if I was going to compare it to a book, that would be it. And I want to say this now. The person who said the quote about the referee was Rudy Charles in one of my first interviews. And he's the one who said the thing about if you're actually noticing the referee, then the referee isn't doing his job. So, yeah, I want to compliment Rudy Charles for the quote. What else do I want to say? Oh, yeah, it is like that. One thing I loved about Larry Zbyszko's quotes, though, if you actually read his book and actually pay attention to what he says, he is a normal person. There's nothing zany about him. And basically, to some extent, that kind of is like you and I to some extent, because we just kind of sit by and watch the crazy shit happen around us and then make fun of it.
Yeah, I have to say, throw more praises towards Larry's book, because that is honestly one of my favorite wrestling books that I've ever read, because it's just a series of weird stories. It's not like Jericho's books, which are very good, are very in-depth and talk about his career and stuff like that, whereas Larry is just like, you can almost picture Larry sitting at the bar telling these stories and just a bunch of people around him laughing, and I appreciate that.
Like I said with Jimmy, that's kind of how his book comes off, and that's how I've tried to make this show seem. Like a couple of guys that are not necessarily always saying what should be said for political correctness purposes or for the correctness of, got to get a guess. Sometimes we have to be honest, and there's ways you can be honest about things without being a complete dick. And I think that's what people suffer from these days, is that if something isn't to your liking, the reaction is almost as if it's like Hitler. Like there is no middle ground anymore. There's no I'm not a fan of Brussels sprouts. It's Brussels sprouts are Hitler. Everything just becomes Hitler and an insane, intense hatred. And
well, it's funny. I was having this conversation with my sister earlier today, and we were talking about the way fans react to comic book movies and superhero movies nowadays. And to me, the idea that Spider-Man 3 is considered to be one of the worst movies ever made, I think is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, we talked about this the other night.
Yeah, it's a flawed movie, sure, but really worst ever? I wouldn't even put it in the top 10 worst ever. I mean, did you live through the 90s? I did. I saw the worst comic book movies ever made, man. I mean, check out Spawn and then get back to me.
Spawn was bad, man. I didn't like that one at all.
Oh, it was horrible. It was really, really bad. But, Yeah, getting back to the interview, Jimmy Korderas, really friendly guy, had a lot of great stories, and just a really cool dude. And it's always nice to look at the referees in wrestling, because as I said in the interview, they are kind of the unsung heroes of the business.
And they are, and you know, you really don't realize, unless something like Montreal happens, or they're brought into a storyline like, say, in WCW, Nick Patrick or Little H, Charles Robinson, you really don't notice the referees. I mean, there could be, you know, a lot of referees that you never really, you know, even learn their name or remember their name, even at a uber fan level. So Jimmy Korderas is a guy that I think we all knew the name of because he was just there for so long, and that's such an uncommon thing. So God bless him, and thank him again for the time, and sincerely, do check out the book. I think you guys are going to enjoy it.
Now, funny thing, you know, Jimmy, his first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 4, and that got me thinking, we're talking about referees. Who was the referee at WrestleMania 4 who looked like, God, and I hope you know who I'm talking about. He just looked really, really weird, like he was something out of a horror movie. But he almost looked like a Peter Lorre, for those of you who don't know who Peter Lorre is, I don't feel like describing it, but he looked like a Peter Lorre parody or something. Like, I don't know, he was just really weird looking.
It wasn't Monsoon's kid, was it?
No, not at all.
No, I'm trying to think who.
That was Morella. Yeah, I remember Morella.
Yeah, he passed away. He died in a car crash.
Oh, when?
Like 20 years ago.
Oh, I never knew that.
While Gorilla was still alive, and that was, I think it was like 96.
Well, Gorilla died in 99.
Yeah, Gorilla died in 99, so I think it was like 96 he died.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because is that why Monsoon disappeared from TV?
I wondered that.
Because he was the president, the quote-unquote president, and he just wasn't one day. He just sort of disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he was no longer doing the announcing role as he had been previously, and he wasn't necessarily, you know, as key of a part of the show. I mean, Bobby Heenan had long since left, so his best tag partner on the microphones ever was with WCW, so he wasn't being used as an announcer. So, I mean, that it might have had a hand in it. I don't know, but, I mean, man, I don't know.
This conversation got dark.
This conversation did get dark.
I never knew that Joey Morella died. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's the referees not being paid attention to. Anyway.
Yeah, and he was a big referee. He refereed arguably the biggest wrestling match of all time.
Absolutely. And I want to put over, on an announcing standpoint, I want to put over Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. I know we do a lot, but good God. You want to talk about those guys and the guys that sound like they could be at a bar just talking? I mean, I know it's a shtick, but those guys made shows that were hours and hours and hours of just squash matches. Must-see television.
They did.
They really did. I mean, they were phenomenal as a team.
Abbott and Costello eat your hearts out.
Absolutely. The best announced team wrestling ever had, and I will argue anybody down on that.
Oh, they were great. Actually, you know, earlier in February, I was rewatching all the old WrestleManias, and when I got to WrestleMania 8, I mean, they just had WrestleMania 7 too, which is amazing that they only got paired up for 2 WrestleManias. But it was just zinger after zinger after zinger, left and right. Like my favorite one was at WrestleMania 8. Bobby Heenan, and for those of you, you know, Bobby Knight, who was the big basketball coach at the time. Bobby Heenan said something to the effect of, "Hey, people love me here. I'm Indiana's favorite Bobby." And Gorilla says something like, "You couldn't hold Bobby Knight's towel, who?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just a really great exchange, and I was like, wow, Bobby was great, and Gorilla was the perfect straight man for him.
Absolutely, and you could just listen to them talk for hours, and you know, even when you saw it coming, it still was funny the way they delivered it. So it was just perfect. I mean, you couldn't do better than that. And I know everybody wants to say that King and JR was the greatest ever, and they were great.
I think JR is the greatest ever. I don't know about King.
Well, it takes 2 to be a pair, though.
Right. But, you know, when I think of JR, I think of him as a singular entity. That was just, you know, whenever he's around, he just makes the commentary better than what it is. And then you have Jerry Lawler today, who is I think the worst commentator in wrestling.
Really?
I mean, I'm sorry. I know you had a heart attack and everything. I'm glad you're alive, but whoa, you're bad at your job.
Wow. All right, from the lips of Patrick Kelly. All right.
Yeah, I'm just saying, he's bad at his job.
Speaking of King now, King is one of the announcers on Raw still, and the WWE was in England, and they were desperately trying to recreate the insanity that was the crowd at the arena across the street. I know it as Meadowlands Arena. Everybody else might know it as Brendan Byrne Arena. I don't even know what the hell it's called this week.
Izod Center.
Izod Center. What the hell is that?
That's the brand for something. I'm slipping my mind. I don't know what it is, but
the Verizon Wireless Continental Airlines, whatever the hell.
Oh, that's the one in D.C. That's changed names like 80 times.
Yep, there you go.
I remember when it was the Capitol Center, it was the U.S. Air Arena, and I think it's changed names at least 2 or 3 times since then.
And what do you know as best? Right? The Capitol Center, right?
Yeah, Capitol Center.
That's probably what people know it as best.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just can put it on the site that Caroline, my wife, is working on, is putting on all the results from venues like, as we discussed with Jimmy, the Maple Leaf Gardens, as well as all the results from every event that ever took place at the, guess what, Capitol Center. So there you go.
Ooh, that's interesting. Do you have the house show results from 1992?
Yes, we have everything that ever happened there. So
okay, I'll have to take a look at that because I was at a house show in 92 and I was at a house show in 96, and I'd like to look those up.
Very cool, very cool. Anyway, so Raw was interesting this week. I mean, I was surprised at when they chose to do the whacked out chants. This time it was against Jericho and Ziggler. I totally got it when it was Sheamus and Randy Orton because both guys' shtick has run thin, and I think that made sense then. This one was kind of surprising because Ziggler's red hot, and it kind of pissed on him.
And Jericho's usually loved it. Actually, when they were in Jersey, Jericho was one of the only baby faces they liked. So I was. What was that?
That was a blip on the line, man.
Oh, well. But, yeah, it was a really weird option, for the fans' perspective. I don't know if they just found the match boring, which I don't know if how Jericho and Ziggler could have a boring match, but I don't know. It was really weird.
It was definitely weird, yeah. And
the week before, going into WWE trying to recreate Magic, the week before they had that really awkward segment with Fandango where they tried to get the crowd to sing the theme song. And what'd you say?
Yeah. That was almost as bad as when Melina and Morrison did the thing, and they had to parody it. It was such a bad segment that they had to parody it later on with Jeff Hardy pretending that he was watching paint dry in comparison to their segment together. I mean, that
right, stuff like that.
Very awkward, very forced kind of thing, and it wasn't going to happen.
And it's this thing that the WWE, they stumble onto magic, something that works. And I've got several other examples that I could sit here and quote all day, and I'll probably drop a few of them. But you can't just force magic onto people and force people to do something. You just got to let it just be natural. Like, no matter how hard they try, you can't force a Rock and Hogan to happen again. And they've tried it with Rock and Cena. I mean, they wanted that to be... They tried it twice. They wanted to have Rock and Hogan in that same reaction. It was obvious the way they worked the match, and you can't force that kind of reaction.
No, you can't. And they didn't know that they were going to get that kind of reaction, and to the credit of those two guys, they knew what to do with it when it came up.
Exactly. And another example, and it's one of the most overused cliches in wrestling, and I think it's done in a desperate attempt to try and recreate Austin and McMahon. You will always have an evil boss. And it's the most overused cliche, and it's been pounded to death, and it's in this vain attempt to try and recapture the magic of Austin McMahon. And so they do it so often, I don't even think they remember why Austin McMahon worked in the first place.
It was simple, and it was probably because it was the first of its kind, but it was
simple. That was a lot of it.
It was the working guy who was beating up his rich boss, and that connected with people, period. It's as simple as that. You could try and overcomplicate it. You could try and psychoanalyze it. In the end, people, everyday people who weren't even wrestling fans, just dug the fact that a everyday roughneck working class guy was knocking the shit out of his millionaire boss.
Right.
That's what it, strip it down, that's what it was. They dug it, they connected with it, and they wish they could do it to their boss. That's what it was.
I was in middle school at the time. It's like, I've got a few teachers I'd like to flip off and give them a Stone Cold Stunner to, but can't.
I never gave anybody a stunner, but I've told off my gym teacher.
How old were you?
Senior.
Nice. Were you just in senioritis fuck it mode?
Yeah, I've had conversation. Our school was the very progressive school, so we were trying to be this is the lead into college kind of thing. And we had A days and B days with different schedules each day with different classes. And we also had the year prior, you could take as many classes as you wanted, that fit within your schedule and choose what you wanted. So I took every one of my academic requirement classes in 11th grade. And then 12th grade, I didn't have dick to do. So there was days at the end of my school, this is the truth, I went in, I showed my face at homeroom, and I left. I just walked home.
That's awesome.
I just like, I could go to class here, but it's current events, and who's going to fucking care if I'm there or not? So, bye.
And the funny thing about that is, and this is where I get mad at my high school, they had that system in place in my high school where, by senior year, you only have to work and this was a private school, so obviously it wasn't that loose, but, I remember seniors, a lot of them would be gone by noon because they'd take 3 or 4 classes and they'd be done. And then, of course, the year I become a senior, it's like, no, seniors have to work a full schedule. And I'm like, you sons of bitches. They took so many things away from us. I'm so bitter about what happened my senior year of high school because they took away so many privileges and so many things that I was looking forward to for being a senior, and it was just, it's infuriating.
This is the truth, but and we're going to get back to wrestling here in just a second. We'll talk a little bit about Impact. It's going to be a little bit of a short show this week because Nick's not with us. By the way, Nick's not with us this week. He is still part of the show. He just couldn't make it tonight, for those who are listening. Only thing I really remember about senior year, other than leaving early, was behind our school we had a hill. Our school was basically built on a hill. And
that was mine.
It had rained. Yeah, and it had rained the night before. And they thought, you know what, we got this big hill right behind the school. It's perfect. Instead of putting the kids on bleachers, let's take another school photo for the yearbook, but have them stand on this grassy hill here because it would be more green and more colorful and trees rather than just standing on the gym bleachers. Okay, fair enough. So the girls were all dressed to the nines, many of them hot as hell and stuck up as hell. And I'm there in my usual, I think I was wearing my Hogan Skull T-shirt and a pair of jeans. Yeah, I wasn't dressing up for nothing. That was me. So anyway, and I'm still that way, by the way. Anyway, so I go up. I remember walking up this grassy hill and seeing how slick it was, and standing at the top. And then we thought, they take the picture. Everything's great. Going down, and 3 of the ones, 2 girls and 1 guy that I didn't like, all were kind of being smartasses to me. And guess what happened to them?
They slipped and fell in the mud.
They slipped and ass over, what is it, the phrase, tea kettle over whatever the hell it is, all the way down the hill, covered in grass stains, covered in mud, and it was great. And the skirts flew up, everything, so you got to see their underwear, and it's like, that was fucking great. Vengeance of a wrestling fan. That's my Carrie story, I guess.
Carrie story. That is a really fucked up movie, by the way, but back to wrestling. What were we even talking about? Recreating magic. You just can't. And the WWE, they never seem to understand this. They get something that works once or twice, and they will pound it to death in a vain attempt to try and recreate it. And it never works. It never does. Magic happens by accident a lot of times.
I'll give Eric Clancy credit. Eric Clancy came up with the most creative quote on that. He says, WWE gets magic in the bottle and decides, hey, let's open the jar and play with it for a little while. That's what they try and do. That sums it up.
And actually, my comparison would be if you've ever seen that episode of SpongeBob where he tears his pants. and everybody thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. So he's like, all right, I'll do it 8 million times in increasingly ludicrous situations, and then by the end of it, nobody cares anymore. It's like, that's the WWE in a nutshell.
Yep, that sums it up.
And with that, we've officially referenced every cartoon in the world on this show.
We haven't mentioned Ninja Turtles yet, but I'll find a way to get it in there.
Oh, I'm sure we've mentioned Ninja Turtles before, but...
Okay. All right, guys. Well, I say guys, but you know what I mean.
One thing I do want to talk about on Raw this week,
okay.
I thought the Shield came off looking amazing.
Oh, yeah. No, that's one thing they did well, and it's the Goldberg complex. Basically, it's we don't know where the hell we want to really go with these guys, but they're over, so let's not beat them.
Exactly. And how cool was their helicopter entrance?
Very cool. Very cool.
I mean, everything, and they didn't pin Undertaker, but they did get a win over a team that included Undertaker, so it really came off like a big deal.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and that's how people are going to read it, and that's how they should push it in the history books and in the weeks to come. Is that they beat a team that included the Undertaker? Because remember, people think that Jay Leno beat Hogan. Jay Leno didn't beat Hogan. He pinned Bischoff. But they're like,
yeah.
Oh, but Hogan was part of the team. So it's like, yeah, you got me there. Anyway, all right. Well, speaking of Hogan, Impact Wrestling this week on the road again, and on the road again. Sorry about that. Copyright. I'm probably going to get the audio pulled on the video because of that now. So I'm watching it. I really enjoyed most of it. I like what they're doing with Hogan because I have a feeling Hogan's going to end up being like major fodder in some way, leading into Bound for Glory for what I presume to be an AJ, Bully Ray.
That's what we're all assuming.
Yeah, we have no idea. This is just our assumption. Very cool that they have the AJ character on there, and then Sting's character as well, which is also very dark and now mysterious. Kind of having the ability to go back to that a little bit with the Stinger and his baseball bat antics. So very cool. And you know what? As much as it's always cool to create your own persona of Hogan for a company, obviously, Red and Yellow Hulkster is very much associated with the WWF. And the Hollywood Hogan character is more associated with WCW. The TNA character of Hogan wasn't really getting it there. It was like the random T-shirts and stuff. Just put him in red and yellow because look at the reaction it got. I mean, that was say whatever you want, and maybe it shouldn't be true, but it is true that unfortunately for them, the best and most over thing that they have is Hogan.
With the live crowd, well, Hogan's always going to get a pop with the live crowds, and that's the whole point of even having him there to begin with. Exactly. I don't know if there's anything they can really do with that, though. I mean, Hogan's not going to wrestle Bully Ray, is he?
Nor should he. God, I hope not.
Even doing his shtick the other night, he looks like he's 800 years old and can barely move.
Well, I mean, the storyline is that he had a knee replacement surgery, and he did. So even doing what he did, he shouldn't have been doing it, but... Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I mean, God. The thing that separates Hogan from Flair is that Hogan knew when it was time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he still wants to be part of the show, and I think he still has a lot to contribute, but God's sake, my exact comment, and I'm telling you the truth, we had just watched Ninja Turtles. There, we got it in there. We flipped over to Impact, and Hogan was doing the thing with Bully Ray. And the exact thing I said was, both of my kids were going nuts. They're like, Hogan's fighting him. And my exact comment was, dear God, Hulk, I love you to death, but don't wrestle.
Yeah.
And that's not me saying that as he's stealing the spotlight. That's me saying it as, dude, you're going to die.
Well, I say that same thing about Flair, and I think after the Jerry Lawler heart attack, I was like, all right, anybody that considers putting Ric Flair in the ring ever, it should be ashamed of themselves, because like that's what you saw with Jerry Lawler that night on Raw. I mean, that's exactly what could happen to Flair.
Oh yeah, well, I think that's what's going to happen to him. I mean, Moondog Spike died in the ring at a Memphis show, ironically run by Lawler.
Right.
And another guy he was well entrenched in the 60s, not in shape, had no business being in the ring, died in the ring against the Rock and Roll Express. We spoke to Ricky Morton about that about a decade ago.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate.
Yeah,
it does happen.
Yeah, some people just don't know when it's time to quit it. And Flair, the sad thing, and this is another thing where I'll compare Hogan to Flair. Hogan still looks like Hogan. Flair doesn't look like Flair anymore.
Yeah,
he looks like a flabby, marshmallow melted version of Flair.
Yeah, again, not to quote Eric again, because he still won't respond to my messages, even though I'm desperately trying. He said he looks like he's in the third stage of the face melt for the Temple of Doom.
Hey, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'll get the movie right.
You're going to quote Indiana Jones. You get it right, boy. I don't even know what
there you
was,
go.
but...
That's right.
But, yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing about Ric Flair. And I was telling you this. I watched all the old WrestleManias a couple months ago. And watching 24 again, I watched his match with Michaels, and I'm just sitting there like, he looks awful in this match. And that was, 5 years ago?
5 years ago.
And he looked horrible in that match. And that match being any good was because of the emotion of the situation with him retiring and Michaels just working his ass off to make that match work.
Exactly. I mean, and they had a horrible match in Japan not many years before that, only a couple years before that. It was basically
you know what? I never saw that match.
This is how it went. It was just a regular squash match. He beat up Flair. He scoop slammed him, did the big elbow off the top, sweet chin music, 1, 2, 3. There was no major, Ric Flair offense. It was essentially a squash match.
Which is probably the most believable that Ric Flair, because whenever he beats people up, I just look at it and go, really? They can't just sidestep him and punch him right in the mouth? That's what I do.
Quick question. Velvet Sky's injury, was that legit?
You know what? I don't know. I'm going to assume no, because she actually worked a match, but...
She did, but the ending of the match was very shitty.
Oh, that blow-up? Yeah, where Mickey has legit gripes. I mean, are they ever going to do that Mickey James heel turn?
Well, that's what she should have done. The end of that match should have been her. She pounded the mat and looked pissed off. They should have had Velvet do the thing where she's holding her leg and reaches to the sky, and Mickey comes and football clips her right in the back of the leg.
Yeah.
Bang!
I was expecting it, actually.
That's what they got to do. Look, she's going to work better as a heel. Tara right now, they didn't even put her with Jesse, so she's kind of, characterless, for lack of a better term. Easily could turn face. They could have Mickey, easily fill the role of the biggest heel in the Knockouts division.
Right.
Easily.
I agree. You saw it in 2006 in the WWE. She can be a great heel. I don't think she's been a heel since then.
Not really, no. She's always played this kind of happy-go-lucky character, and I know that she probably wants a component of that to stay true because of her music career, such as it is. But, if she's serious about wrestling and wrestling is her number one thing, then I don't see any logical reason why she doesn't turn heel.
Mm-hmm. I love how a lot of people do that. It's that weird perception that people have of wrestling. And somebody said this when, I think it was on Fox News or some other news network. I don't remember who it was exactly.
Regarding the swagger thing.
Regarding the swagger thing. And it was such a great quote because everybody was just getting on WWE's ass for this character. It's offensive. It's this, that, and the other. Or, there's the other side of the coin saying it makes fun of the Tea Party or whatever. And this guy got up there and he said, I don't remember what network it was or who the guy was, but he said, the amazing thing about wrestling is that it's fake until people don't want it to be. And then it's it's exactly, and it's so weird to me that everybody says, oh, wrestling's fake, and then you just tell me, it's like, well, Mickey James she wants to stay a happy-go-lucky babyface for her music career, and I'm like, why should that even matter? I mean, the wrestling character is a character on TV.
Well, yeah, I'll be honest with you, and I'm just going to use this as an example because it's the last album I bought. If the lead singer of Skid Row was a wrestling character, I would not give a rat's ass if he was a babyface or heel. If the music is still good, I'm still going to buy the music. What the hell do I care what he's doing on a wrestling show? And I think that's
exactly. Well, and And that's another thing. The people playing these wrestling characters, I mean, they're not the wrestling characters. That's just such a strange thing. It's like sending death threats to Sergeant Slaughter. I'm like, do you really think he was an Iraqi sympathizer? I mean, you really think that was the case with him? The dude was packaged with G.I. Joe, for crying out loud.
Exactly. Incidentally, I saw a G.I. Joe Rock figure, and I thought it was bizarre.
What did it look like?
It looked like The Rock. It's the big Barbie doll style one, not the little.
Oh, okay.
Not the little ones that you could twist until eventually the springs break and they fall in half, but the the actual, the big Barbie doll style ones.
Yeah, I have some of those old ones upstairs. Actually, I have of course their outfits are all screwed up, but I've got Cobra Commander, Destro, a couple of Dukes, Gung Ho, some of those.
I got a couple of those too. Yeah, I have a couple of those too, and then they also did the Street Fighter ones in the exact same style.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the Street Fighter guys. And I remember I used to have like big cage matches on top of a folding chair with the G.I. Joe guys against the Street Fighter guys and stuff. So
all the weird things we used to do.
Yeah, before everything was on video games, we used to use our imagination.
Imagination. I actually had this discussion with Eric when I was in New York, and we were talking. It's like, do kids still play with toys? And I was happy to hear. It's like, yeah, apparently they do. Which every time I see a kid with like an iPhone or just bury their face in a video game, I kind of get sad because it's like, come on. I mean, toys are really, really help out with imagination, I think, and and really do inspire imaginative thinking and creative thinking.
I agree, and I got my, one of the things I do with my 3-year-old, and this is the truth, is we sit down and we play with all the Ninja Turtles toys. And to his credit, he tries to do the voices, and he comes up with stories for what's happening in this escapade that we have to solve. And it's just amazing to hear what comes out of the imagination of even somebody that age just playing with toys. Mm-hmm. So you can't do that with a video game, period.
And right, and again, talking about toys, I had a lot of those LJN WWF figures, and how do you think I learned how to, do fantasy booking and come up with good matches? I did it because I used to play with toys, and I used to go, all right, what do I want to see? Well, I want to see Demolition versus Legion of Doom, and how do we set that up? So I used to plan out matches for long-term storylines with my toys.
There you go. That's what I did too. I mean, I used to come home from school, I'd do my homework, and I'd pull the old thing out, and I'd pull it out, put it on the couch cushion, and have my matches and book storylines and everything. I mean, to show you how whacked out you can get, I had El Matador challenging for the world title. So you could do amazing things with your imagination, guys. Anyway,
I used to build for ladder matches and cage matches because the original LJN ring didn't have a cage or a ladder. I used to make them out of Legos.
Wow, that's inventive. See, I was less inventive. The WCW ring, which was the exact same size as the Hasbro ring, had a red steel cage. So I just used that. But anyway, gonna call it a day here, guys. Next week.
Oh, did we want to talk about the X Division?
Oh yeah, real quick, the X Division. Nick Knoll is a little bit of a TNA super fan, and he would probably disagree with this, but they got to change the X Division back to just the regular X Division.
It's, and I was telling you this on the phone, this whole new format that they're doing with the triple threat matches, and it's all triple threat matches, and they're plugging guys in left and right, and it's really one step forward, 2 steps back. It's like, all right, you want to focus on the X Division and actually give them significant TV time? Okay, that's good. You want to bring back guys like Petey Williams and Sanjay Dutt, who are still really good. Chris Sabin, they gave him a big video package on Impact this week. It's like, all right, you're plugging some good guys in there. They can stay healthy and perform well. That's great. That's all well and good.
Just stay healthy for more than 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. But this triple threat format is just not working. And the X-Cam that the referee has really came off awkwardly on Impact last week.
ECW used to use, on the Hardcore TV show, which was the best show that they ever had, they often, if they didn't have their regular TV cameras there, would air matches using what was RF Video's fan cam. And they would air the RF Video footage, obviously clipped to fit a TV format and the length of it and everything. But that is what it really reminded me of, and that just seems so low rent and low budget. It didn't come off as really professional and edgy. It came off as just low budget.
Exactly. And I think doing all triple threat matches, another problem with that, I think the matches get really repetitive. I feel like, we're only, a month into this. I feel like I've seen the same match 6 times.
Well, exactly. And the crowd was chanting boring last week.
Mm-hmm.
The guys are out here
they
flipping and flopping all over the place, and the crowd was chanting boring because it just doesn't make any sense. We talked about this, I think I talked about this last time. Ivory, who we had on the show for about 6 hours, did an interview with us, and it was
an interview I was not a part of.
No, you weren't. It was me and Chuck, and I remember I was just watching my clock because I desperately needed the bathroom, but I didn't dare go. Anyway, she said that, one of the reasons that Shelton Benjamin in WWE was put into triple threat matches was they just couldn't figure out how to make any psychology work in his matches because he was struggling with it. So they figured, okay, we'll just have him in triple threat matches. He could do one athletic move that'll bring everybody to their feet, and they'll forget the fact that it's a triple threat match because one-on-one just isn't working, storytelling-wise. And that's essentially what I think they're trying to do here, but it just didn't work. And, the X Division was built on car wrecks and flip fests and stuff like that, but the guys who built it were AJ and Jerry Lynn, and even giving him his credit low-key, and guys like I'll even go as far as saying Kid Cash, guys who managed to do that style but also make it make sense.
And bring character into it as well. And actually, I think, to take it a step further, I thought the X Division was at its best, and there were triple threat matches involved with this when it was AJ, Joe, and Daniels, and those series of matches that those three had. Each guy was uniquely different. Each guy was over at the time and at their best. I mean, that period, that was probably the best that Samoa Joe and Christopher Daniels ever was. And the matches were great because of it. And they
gave him an hour. They gave him an hour on Impact once. I remember that.
Did they? I don't even remember that.
Yeah, it was basically the whole show was just their match. And, that's fine. Nice. That worked just fine.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Anyway,
and it's, now these matches, what they really do feel like, they feel very indie.
They do, and I'll tell you what, they're trying to recreate the magic. They're guilty of what WWE's done. And that's something that we can't allow TNA to be. We can't allow them to make the same mistakes WWE does because WWE has to be right once, and TNA has to be right all the time except once. They have to have that perfect batting average. Otherwise, they're going to get shit and panned.
Right.
Anyway, dude, next week is Hardcore Holly here on the Interactive Interview. And Patrick is very afraid of this interview. Mm-hmm. Patrick's afraid of this interview.
I've heard some things about him, but then again, I'm not Matt Capitelli, so... And he can't beat me up over the phone.
You can try. Alrighty, dude. Well, we will all see you there next week, and for anybody else who's still out there, check us out, WrestlingEpicenter.com, and do check out the book of Jimmy Korderas via the link on our website. Thanks again to Jimmy, and thanks, Pat, for spending this time with me.
No problem, dude.
Have a great night, and we'll see you next week here on WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Later.